Okay. Jordan Petersen, you probably all know who this is. He's a, I'm not sure what his title is. Like behavioral something or other. Really sharp guy. I'm a fan of his. From Canada. But he's done a lot of stuff in the past on the Bible, kind of talking about the Christian faith. I haven't seen or heard all of it, some of it. There's lots of hours of it. And recently, I think it was on Joe Rogan's, and he's talking about either the Bible or Christianity or whatever. And like I said, I don't want to discredit him or anything, but I've heard a little bit, not all of it. And I've said this before. The Christian walk, the Bible, the gospel, it's a spiritual thing more than anything else. If you don't understand the spiritual aspect of it, you're not getting the whole. You're not going to get the full benefit. Someone like Jordan Petersen, he's an intellectual. He's a very intelligent man. And I'm not, in comparison. When you get in the Bible and you're attempting this walk, you'll meet people that want to know what you're doing. Maybe you're sharing the gospel or reading a lot. They see a Bible in your hand or whatever. And you'll meet some people that you know who are extremely intelligent, intellectuals. More often than not, you'll find it's no, that's not the right word. More often than not, you'll find that they're very critical of the faith of this thing you're doing. And the reason being is they see no evidence that it's anything other than myth, stories, this kind of thing. There's no, you can't hand them this body of work that says, these smart people found this, this, and this, therefore this is true kind of thing. They get real scientific, which is fine. But for these kind of people, it's very difficult, anything spiritual. Because most spiritual things you cannot explain, you do not have evidence for. The longer you do this, you'll see maybe yourself, where there's things you've seen, felt, or whatever that you might not be able to explain. And a lot of times you won't, because people will think less of you. You get criticism. But you'll also maybe have seen how your behavior has changed. You may have met other people, maybe some person that gave you their testimony, who was someone who was just downright impossible, who now is a completely different person. And so as believers, this becomes evidence to us that, yeah, this is working on a spiritual level. Okay. I don't share my testimony with people because it doesn't matter to them. It was something to me. It was a supernatural experience that I have no proof or evidence of other than what happened to me at the time. So it's enough for me. That just got me started. But to explain that to someone and try to say this is real and therefore you should do it too, I wouldn't waste my time with that. Because some people will have to have a supernatural experience to even consider this. Now I bring up Jordan Petersen. Excuse me. I bring up Jordan Petersen because he's one of these people I believe he's an intellectual, he's very intelligent. Excuse me. He's an intellectual and very intelligent. He's someone who supports most of his beliefs in a scientific way, with evidence and compiling enough information and all this kind of thing to support your belief, and that's fine. But this is a spiritual thing. You can't always support everything, all your spiritual ideas, with evidence or in a scientific fashion. And I think what I'm seeing so far, because a lot of Christians are all excited about this Jordan Petersen. Oh, he's coming around. God's doing a work in him. And all that could be true. Like I said, I don't know the man personally. I could tell you either way. But a lot of Christians are excited about this because it's one of those things where it might make the faith look good and all this kind of deal. They get all excited about that. But someone like a Jordan Petersen, what I'm seeing in what I've seen of this is I believe he's taking the gospel, we'll call it, the aspects of the Bible, and trying to make them fit intellectually. In other words, maybe explain things where it can be less spiritual to understand. So it's easier for someone like him and people like him to go, oh, okay, there may be something to this. Okay. He's going to bend the faith or the message, making it less spiritual and more something that can be supported logically to appeal to more people, which is just a huge opposite. That's just a complete waste of time. I could be wrong. Maybe that's not what he's doing, but from what I've seen, I think he's going to make it more palatable for the intellectual by somehow making it more, giving it more of a, I don't want to say evidence, but making it somewhat more intellectual and an intellectual's approach to this thing, which it's so hard for these types of people because they're not spiritual, because it doesn't fit with their intellectual idea. I could be wrong. So I think a lot of people say, because this has happened to the faith before. This was the big, when the liberal church started and all this kind of thing, where they took everything that was spiritual, like miracles and all these things, and they ignored that and then kept whatever was left, making it a non-spiritual exercise. And that was a big mistake. And it was the intellectuals that did this. So there's a good chance he could be doing the same thing. I could be wrong. I could be told. I said, I've not heard everything or seen everything he's done here on the YouTube and all that stuff. But if you're a Christian and you've had a friend who's just very smart, very well educated, and you find sometimes they are just extremely, I mean, I don't even attempt to bother these people with it, but they're extremely critical of what you're doing, because they believe you're on some path where it's just myth and stories out of a book or whatever the case is. You have nothing to support it. And for someone like that to go the way of the faith, they either have to have a supernatural experience that completely wrecks their intellectual foundations, or they warp the message to become more logical and meet their scientific standards on all this. Well, he probably didn't walk on the water, but he did this and this instead. He probably didn't feed thousands, but it was the idea that, it became kind of a theme or whatever kind of stuff. And so they start discounting all kinds of the miracles and this kind of stuff. And I think that's what could be happening with Jordan Petersen. Like I said, I could be wrong, but I've seen this before with people that I've dealt with. And this has happened in the past in the Christian faith, at least in the last 150 years. I mean, they had different Bibles for it and everything. Anyhow, but interesting. You might say I could be wrong. Maybe it's going to be he'll get some sort of kind of revival going or something like that. I know a lot of Christians are real excited about it. This Jordan Petersen. I wouldn't necessarily get my hopes up, because unless he's talking about some totally far out stuff that's totally out of left field, something happened to him and this, that, and the other. His supernatural event, which in a lot of cases, if he had like my experience, he'd most likely be laughed off the stage and it would just destroy his reputation. It's a spiritual thing, not intellectual. That just gets in the way. But I hope I'm wrong. Hope it turns out to be a spiritual thing for him, and he turns a whole lot of other people onto it. Love you. God bless.